everybody, Vickie Magic here from My Destiny Designer. So our new podcast is called Wake Up, You've Got This. And it's all about letting people know that they actually have everything that they need to be all that they ever want to be already within them. So my journey, my intention, my purpose, if you like, is to actually encourage people to wake up and see that for themselves. So today we're very excited, I'm very excited to have a lovely lady by the name of Rachel Pope. And so Rachel has a story that for most would actually see her potentially in a ball on the floor and not get up. But this amazing lady is going to share with us how she did get up and her story of grief, and how she's actually turned that story of grief into a story of encouragement and a story of inspiration to others. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you, Vickie. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and share.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your journey and what, you know, sort of the multitude of sort of things that did happen for you and how that played out.
Mm-hmm. So at 17, my whole life was turned upside down with the diagnosis of my father with terminal cancer, and he was pretty much given a couple of months to live. So for anyone at that age, I had just graduated from high school. I had been accepted into the Royal Queensland Aero Club as a student pilot and Griffith University to study a Bachelor of Science majoring in aviation. So, you know, 17, the whole world at your feet, and all your friends and everything, you know, getting excited about leaving school, and I was dealt with this huge blow. Yeah. So at that age, you're not equipped to deal with those sorts of things.
And sometimes at any age.
Well, at any age, that's right. But, you know, for our family, it was just devastating. And my father actually passed away 6 weeks after diagnosis.
Oh, wow.
So it was very quick. He was only 47.
Yep.
And I have 3 older brothers. So I was the youngest of 4 growing up in Brisbane. And so, yeah, that just, you know, catapulted me into grief and depression, but I didn't deal with it. I masked it because, you know, you're young and I was flying aeroplanes and with all my friends and partying and doing the normal 17, 18-year-old things that you do. So fast forward, so I was still living with my mum at the time, and she was my rock, and together we sort of, you know, did the best we could. And fast forward 8 years, we were dealt with another tragic blow with the death of my eldest brother in a car accident. So we'd gone from, you know, having illness, even though that was still sudden, to the phone call in the middle of the night. And my brother was a very special human being. He grew up most of his life as a paraplegic, and he was a paraplegic athlete. He worked for Qantas.
Brett.
Yeah, Brett. He was 33 when he died in a car accident, and you know that he was the glue to our family as well, just because he, you know, was so special and such an amazing person. Again, we were just, you know, thrown into the depths of grief and muddled through. I had met my husband at that time. And so Brett's death was actually the turning point for me to look at my life. I was 25 and look ahead at the career I'd chosen, and had decided that maybe it wasn't my purpose. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to travel. I wanted to get married and have kids and move to the coast. My mum had moved up here. So I put the flying aside, and that was a big decision to make.
Yeah.
And went back into retail management and settled up here, and we married and had kids, and life was great. And I, through retail and after having my first daughter, I discovered an early learning program called Jimbaroo. It's a franchise, and fell in love with the program, and I've always loved kids.
Yep.
I still nanny part-time, small children, and you know, I started working for them and was managing the business. And when my youngest boy had a daughter and my youngest boy started preschool, we decided that it'd be a great business for me to have.
Yeah.
So we purchased the franchise, a big area on the Sunshine Coast. I had staff, lease, everything that comes with a small business.
Yep.
And 2 weeks after we signed the papers, my husband was diagnosed with cancer.
2 weeks? My goodness.
So you can imagine what my thought was then, to having the previous experience with my dad, was, oh my gosh, you're going to be gone in 6 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we had a bit more time than that, and we were lucky that he could come home and spend all that time at home. He was very strong, and not many people could tell that he had cancer throughout all his treatment. He didn't lose his hair, and he was still riding my kids to school and kindy, and just an amazing guy right to the end. But 16 or so months of hospital operations, chemo, radiation, all the horrible things that go with that.
That must have been such a trying time.
It was, especially with a business and 2 young children.
Yeah, yep.
I'm very grateful that I had so much support from my family. But sadly, in October 2012, he passed away at home, and he was the same age and from the same cancer as my dad.
My goodness.
So it was full circle for me.
Yep.
I was 38 at the time, and the kids were 4 and 6.
Wow. Yep.
So for me, that was, coming full circle in my grief. And, apart from the first few months of survival, or first year of survival, it took me a while to resurface. And once I had resurfaced, a few years later, I moved close to the beach and did a few self-care things for myself. That I sold my business, and I had some time to step back and take a look and see what was going on here. And it was in that moment that I realised I hadn't grieved my dad and my brother all those years ago, and that all of that resurfaced. And so I was like, what is this grief? I'm in this with being a widow and a solo parent with my husband, but why am I feeling all this for my brother and my dad? And so I went looking for resources and books and counselling and all those sorts of things, and I just found it was something that wasn't talked about.
Put it in the closet and don't talk about it because you'll upset that person.
That's right. And so the more I studied grief and all the stages and all the clinical stuff, I was searching for something more than that, something that could allow me to grieve, allow my children to grieve, but also give me a positive light on, okay, I've got the whole rest of my life. How can I still do this, be the positive person that I am, and still honour them, but still allow joy into my life? So that was the starting point to my journaling and my community.
Yep. And so your community is Gifts from Grief, and that's also the name of the book. And this book, there we go. And so this is just this year, isn't it?
Yeah, June
2019.
Yes.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
And so who's this book for?
The book is for anyone who has lost something that's irreplaceable. Grief can come in many forms. It's not just in death. It can be loss of a business or a divorce or relationships. I first started out thinking I was writing my story as a young widow, but it actually transformed into much more than that. Excuse me, because the feedback I was getting from my community of people relating to me was so wide and varied, and a lot of the feedback too was from people who hadn't lost, but people who had friends had, and they wanted to know how they could help.
And they support their friends.
And that's something that's very misunderstood and not talked about as well. And we tend to, because we don't know what to say, we don't say anything at all. Yeah. And the biggest help or support you can give a friend is acknowledgement, and just acknowledging it, because if you don't say anything and the months go by, then people tend to feel very isolated and very alone in their grief.
Yeah.
So I end up writing a bonus chapter on how to help a friend, because it is one of my most asked questions. And the book evolved. I first started journaling and posting blogs and things, and that's when I started getting the feedback that I had the encouragement to write a book.
This is needed. Yeah, absolutely. And so if you were to reflect back over the journey and the time, like even back from when you were 17, when do you think was that moment that you were able to wake up and see that you actually have got this?
So I didn't have that awareness with my dad and my brother, and I realised that a lot of depression and things that come with not grieving properly had manifested in my life, and it wasn't until after my husband had passed that I had that moment, and I had many, don't get me wrong, many on my knees, dark moments in my life post-loss with my kids, but one of my first, top 3 chapters that I write about is the gift of growth, the gift of gratitude, and the gift of perspective. And the growth part was the biggest awakening, because I was staring at myself in the mirror. And, we attach ourselves to things, and I had attached myself to being married, and you make decisions together, you decide where you're going on holidays together, where you're going to live together, and I had to strip all that back, and also dealing with my brother and my dad, and take a good look at myself and say, well, who am I? Who am I here on my own as a mother, as a solo parent, as a businesswoman? And the awakening moment was, what can I do, to take those positive steps forward to, like I had said before, to still honour the grief and not make the same mistake that I had not known about back then, that I still very much wanted to grieve because I knew it was important. But I also wanted to be an example for my kids that it was healthy and that you could still be happy at the same time. So there's this duality to, being happy and sad for different moments in your life, because you're always going to remember them and you're going to grieve the future for them not being there, but that shouldn't stop you from feeling the joy in that moment.
And so what difference has it made to your life to actually make this decision to, sort of wake up, if you like?
I think it's my chapter on perspective. People who have lost, look at the world differently, and the difference that it's made. And one of my biggest tools that I teach people is gratitude and gratitude journaling. And we hear a lot about that, but the difference that it's made is that I do get to enjoy each day, and I do choose that, and it is hard work. And I still do allow myself to grieve and cry, and the difference that it's made back to when I was 17 or 25, I didn't allow that part, and I put on the brave face, and the masking can just, manifest so many other things.
Yeah, because that's the thing, isn't it? What you resist persists. And so if you ignore something and you resist it or you push it away, it pushes back harder, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. And so you actually have to acknowledge it and allow it, don't you? Yeah. Oh, I love that. And so the daily, the practice of daily gratitude is that way of kind of really looking for what's right. And so do you have a methodology for yourself for that?
Yeah, just daily journaling, just taking a moment, usually at the end of the day, to write down, at least 3 things that I'm grateful for. And, when you're in the depths of hard times or hardships, that can be really hard. Yeah. And it used to be just for me crawling into bed and thank you for this pillow and thank you for my bed and just simple things like that. But, what the hard thing is when you're journaling gratitude, true gratitude is learning to be grateful for the challenges as well.
Yeah, for
and
the
writing
gifts
that down.
in those,
and though it's painful and it's hard, but it's made me who I am now, and I believe we're all born with a purpose and given life to fulfill that purpose, but we're also born with other people in mind. And so it's very hard, when I talk to people who've lost a child or a child illness, it's very hard for them to deal with that. But at the same time, I've never met one of those parents who have not completely flipped their view and outlook on life, because of the death of that child, that child is gifted and taught them so much. So for me, the daily gratitude now is into, fully writing out everything that I'm grateful for, even the challenges. And what that allows you to do, practicing gratitude daily, is it allows you to not be stuck in the past, because it pulls you into the moment about, what happened today. That's good. It allows you not to worry too much about the future, because it pulls you back into the moment. Well, this is what happened today, but tomorrow's a new day. And it allows you to not miss what's right in front of you. Because often we can spend so much time worrying about the future, or spending time in a state of lack.
Or living in that past and wishing we were back there with our loved ones.
Wishing for things to be different. Or, concentrating on what we don't have, and by doing that we miss what's right in front of us, and unfortunately we only get gifted that lesson when it's gone and when it's taken away from us. So by doing the daily gratitude, you can become grateful before that happens.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome. And so if you were to share with our listeners a lesson that you would put down as, the biggest lesson that I learnt through my life and the one that I want to share or gift or, whatever is the right thing for you, what would that be?
I think we often don't take time to take stock of all our previous achievements and things. So I think the biggest lesson is for people to look at their life and not, look how far they've come in so many different areas, that its success is, portrayed in so many different ways today. But for me, the biggest lesson was for me to write down and look at what I had achieved and how far I had come. That gave me strength to keep moving forward. So for me to tell myself, you've got this, it means you've done hard things before, you can do this again, and I'd be worried about when I started my speaker journey and writing and presenting and things, and I'd get so fearful and so worried and nervous, and then I literally flipped it on its head when I went home and wrote down everything I did on my first night flight solo when I was 17. And, there I was in a 2-seater Cessna flying 6,000 feet above the ground from Brisbane to Bundaberg.
Yep.
No mobile phones or GPS back then. That's showing my age. But literally at night in a putt-putt engine aircraft with map and a penlight torch in my mouth.
If I can do that, I can do anything.
If I can do that, I can sit down and do an interview or a podcast. And so or giving birth.
Yeah.
I think that's the big lesson, is to, look at how far you've come, look at the hard things you've done. You can do more. You can do hard things, and you've got this.
Yeah, yep. And so if you were to think about how you might encourage somebody listening to actually take that on board for themselves, that they really do have what they need to be whatever they want to be, what kind of words of wisdom would you give them?
I think we don't talk enough, we don't communicate enough, and I'm a big believer in the more you speak something out, the more it will come to fruition. So when I had the idea of the book, or people that I admired, I reached out. I wasn't afraid to send people messages and say, hey, I've got this idea, can we have a coffee and can I just run it by you? And it's really only them listening. It's really only you speaking out what your heart desires. So by doing that more and more and more, it gave me the encouragement to follow that. And so excuse me, even if you're a parent or a mother at home and you're wondering, do I have this motherhood thing? I think we need to speak more and talk to people and communicate and just get that encouragement from each other. Yep. There's so many great communities out there that you can connect online, and you can, express your concerns or your great ideas. Yep. And as soon as you start getting that feedback and encouragement from people, then, that gets you moving.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And so somebody who potentially is listening to this today, who has actually lost someone in their life and they are finding it difficult to, come to grips with the grief, what would be a tip that you might give them to help them? Finding a support network is, by not thinking that you can do it on your own is a big mistake I think a lot of people feel, because they may not feel that they do have that support around them. So to reach out to communities or, counselling or finding something that works for you, and to not be afraid to tell people what you need, often. And that's where the people that don't know what to do comes into it, because they'll send out the text, let me know if there's anything you need. Well, someone who's grieving is not going to text you and let you know that they need their kids babysit so you can go to the hairdressers, or they need their lawn mowed, or So could that be a tip then too for for people looking to potentially support somebody who is grieving, rather than sending a tip saying let me know how I can help? would it be better for them to say, hey, I'm going to get you dinner today and drop it over?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's in the showing up and giving them choices and saying, hey, I've got Saturday morning free. Would you like me to mind the kids, or would you like to just go out together, or, you know, I'll come and pick you up. Or, what's your favourite food? I'm dropping around some meals this week, and just not giving them, you know, too much to think about. And often in those early months we do get a lot of support, but it's often in the 6 month and the year later that people need to check in with their friends and on the hard anniversaries and things like that. It's just in the acknowledgement to say, hey, you know, I don't know what to say, but I'm thinking of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I had someone recently, actually. I lost my mum in November, not last year, or not this year rather, last year, so it was last year, only just over a year ago. And I remember how much it hurt when somebody who I adore actually said to me, aren't you over that yet? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't even a year. Mm-hmm. What would you say to someone that said that? Because that's so hurtful.
It is. And there's so many platitudes out there. You know, you get at least you had a chance to say goodbye with illness, or with an accident, at least they didn't suffer, and all these at least with baby loss and things. I've learned so much from so many people that get told those things. And I think it is and it's not from any place of not knowing what to do or say. And it, unfortunately, it's just one of those situations where unless you've been in those shoes, you don't know that that's hurtful. So my advice for people or friends is I don't know what to say, but I'm here and I'm thinking of you, and, you know, I can do this and this and this, but I can't take away the pain. Young widowhood was a very, very interesting journey when it came to you shouldn't be and should be at this stage and shouldn't be at this stage, and that was a big journey for me.
Because everyone's at their own stage, aren't they?
Exactly, and there is no time frame, and it's okay. And people, you know, there's a great TED talk out there from a lady who talks about moving forward, not moving on, and she talks, you know, it's okay to be talking about her husband because he existed and she sees him in her children every day. But she's moving forward with her new life, but she will always talk about him, and he will always
doesn't have to move on from him.
No, and same with parents,
that.
you know, and things, and we should have photos and we should ask people what were they like instead of those hurtful statements, or I'm sorry to hear that, what was your mum like? Or people like us, we want to hear their name spoken, and I would want that when I'm gone. And more, I guess, so this is a question. Is it a good question to ask? So what was their legacy? What did they leave? Yeah, what did they like?
To me is lovely.
Exactly. Yeah. Instead we get, do you mind me asking how they died? You know, and because they're curious, but at the same time, it's, you know, it's the first question is what was their name? You know, so then you can move forward in the conversation with speaking their name. Did they live nearby, or did you see them much, or, you know, just opening up those conversations. So I'm just so passionate about lifting the lid on these conversations around grief, because, you know, Society of Mental Health and all those sorts of things, that grief is an emotion, and it can be a facilitator towards, you know, deep depression and mental health issues, if not openly, you know, felt and dealt with. Yeah.
And so is there anything that you feel would be really beneficial also, like aside from anything that's on here, that might be really beneficial to somebody listening who's thinking, you know, how could this help me? How could Rachel help me?
I think it's always in that finding a space and a safe space where people understand and know what you're feeling, and knowing that it's safe to say these things in a great environment. So find that community, find somewhere online, whether it's in pregnancy loss or an infant loss or parent loss, and there's so many different communities now. Locally, it's just surrounding yourself with people that support you, and that you feel comfortable talking about your loved one with them too, and just saying, hey, you know, I'm really missing my mum right now, or, you know, I just really need a cry and a hug.
Yeah.
And just being open about it. I think, you know, community is just the biggest thing as far as finding people that can relate and know that you're feeling, and read my book.
Yeah, absolutely, because I'm sure that's filled with amazing tips to help people as well. And I think the thing that I love about what you shared today as well is that grief isn't necessarily just about death, that actually grief is also about, you know, you might grieve, you know, you might even grieve something that you've broken. It's a word that actually is not just about death, isn't it?
No, and my life, you know, the book is about all the gifts that come from challenges and changes and things. It could be moving interstate and you're grieving your past life. So all of these gifts are just things that I had to discover and have the awareness for myself, because it is something that none of us are going to avoid. We are all going to lose someone or, you know, something at some point in our life. So how can we, as a society, support each other through that, knowing that it's unavoidable? And how can we talk about it, but also how can we celebrate our person? And I always say the best thing you can do to honour a loved one loss is be more of what you admired in them. And, you know, when you think about the different people that have come and gone in your life and what you loved about them the most, then one of my chapters is the gift of adventure, you know, and it could be something that you're afraid to do, but that you did with that person only because they were beside you. So, you know, taking that gift on and being more of that is their gift to you.
Yeah, I love that. My dad died in 2015, and his gift to me was the power of the mind, that you can do, be, or have whatever your heart desires. And so in 2016, to honour him, I ran a marathon.
Wonderful.
You know, to prove that, you know, you can do. And I think that's it, isn't it? So to think about how you might honour them and be more of yourself in that way. Because I never would have ran a marathon.
And it could be in giving and in compassion and contribution. It might be something you've never considered before in your life, but a family member may have been always good at doing that in society and giving back. And they can be a reminder to you that that's, you know, part of your growth too.
And they could even be your courage to do it, couldn't they? You know, there might be something that you wouldn't do, but you're doing it, you know, kind of to honour them, or, you know.
And all of those things help that grieving process, because it brings it up, it brings it forth, and it brings an element of happiness to your grief.
Yeah, I love that. And so if there was one more thing that you would like to share, what might that be?
I think is to have the awareness of the people around you who are grieving. That is really my purpose, is to really put some education into this topic. And to not make up in your own mind what they need or don't need, to just be present and have that awareness of
you need grieving. This, you need that, you need the other thing. No, I don't.
So
that's a great tip.
Just to listen and to be present and feel what they need, and then help them with that.
And so my last thing is that, you know, and I'm offering this to everyone, if there's any offer or gift that you might like to make to our listeners.
So for this podcast series, Vickie, I'm just offering 25% off sale for my book. If people want to read my book or gift it to someone, which is what I've found, you know, then I've just had such an amazing response from people who've read my book, but then they've come back and said, I really need to send this to my friend. Love that.
And how could they claim that?
So just with a coupon gift, the word gift, if they jump online, the links are all on my Facebook and website, giftsfromgrief.com, and enter the coupon code GIFT, GIFT, and that'll give them their 25% off for postage in Australia. Outside of Australia, my book's on Amazon and all of the online platforms there as ebook as well.
Yes, because who knows where someone might be listening to this.
Absolutely.
We never know. It might go worldwide.
And I know my book's already in the US and the UK and South Africa, and just from followers on my social media.
So Rachel, thank you so much for coming along today and for giving your time and valuable tips.
Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Awesome. Gifts from Grief with Rachel Pope. And this is Vickie Magic from My Destiny Designer with Wake Up, You've Got This.